Hey everybody, RC here. Now, there is a new release of Lightroom, right? So if you take a look at Lightroom, you're going to have Lightroom 4.1. And one of the things that they've added inside of 4.1 is your ability to work with TIFF images that are, HDR type of quality. So 16-bit, 32-bit, like it's actually dealing a lot more on the 32-bit side of things. Now, what does that mean for you, right? As a person who's working inside of Lightroom, what are we talking about here? Well, I have a whole bunch of pictures here to kind of illustrate the example that I'm working with. Now, inside of here, I have let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So these are all 7 individual shots that I'm using that I'm going to work with. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take these shots, all 7 of them, and having them selected inside of Lightroom, I'm going to right click, I'm going to edit in, and I'm going to merge them to HDR Pro inside of Photoshop. Right, clicking on that, that's going to take those files and it's going to export these things out so that you can do something with them. It's also important to keep in mind here that this is going to work a lot better for you if inside of the preferences when you're working with this, you make sure that you have in the Edit in Photoshop CS6 TIFF. Normally, I have mine set up as PSD, and when I do that, I'm finding that it's not importing the way that I wanted to. So what I did temporarily for this is that I had to go ahead and switch this over to TIFF in order for you to be able to see that. Now, that it still works, right? Like if you go inside of Lightroom and you have this imported as PSD, it'll still work fine. You just have to do a save as, save it as a TIFF, and then from there you can go ahead and do something. But then you're going to have to re-import it into Lightroom on your own. I'm finding. So if it changes, I'll let you guys know. But right inside of here, this is what you would use when you're working inside of, HDR Pro inside of Photoshop. And notice that by default, I'm set right here to 32-bit. If I click on this and I switch this to 16-bit, that's where I would do any kind of HDR work. That's how it normally happens. But this time around, what I'm going to do is I'm going to save it as 32-bit. Once I have that done, I'm going to click on the OK button. It's going to take a mashup of all of this information and it's going to create this super big file, a file with high dynamic range. Now, the good part about what's going to happen here is that it's going to take this entire file and it's going to merge it, right? It puts it all together into one giant 32-bit file, right? We see it right here. And I'm just going to do a save as, and I'm going to call this Big Church File. And see, now it's saving it as a TIFF. Now, just for the purposes of what we've done here, I already have mine set up, right? So I have my image here ready for us to work. Now, that's the image that it created, right? So that's my 32-bit file. This is where you'll start seeing a lot of the differences, right? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to the Develop module. In the Develop module, I have my exposure slider. Matter of fact, let me show you something else. This is the middle exposure, right? So out of these 7 shots, this is the shot, this third shot. That's why I have it flagged in red. It's about comparable to what you see with this HDR shot. This is an HDR shot. This one here is a regular shot. Take a look at my exposure slider here on the regular shot. Grab my regular shot. I'm going to expose it and drag it to the left. It gets me to about a -5. If you zoom in here, you see, all right, well, that looks okay. It's all right. I'm going to zoom over here to the pews. No detail. Now, I'm going to grab my exposure and I'm going to drag it over to the right. Notice if I drag it to, let's say, +3, well, it only goes up to +5. And that's a lot of junk in that one image, right? Not good. So I only go from -5 to +5, and when I really get to about +3, it starts looking a little junky, right? There's all of this. So we've lost some stuff. That's not good. Now, I'm going to go to the same file. Well, not the same file, but the same look, but this one is a 32-bit HDR file. Now watch this. My exposure, 3, 4, 5. Oh, wait, but there's more. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You can get really, really, really dark into here. Now, I'm I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to go to the pew. Watch this. Start bringing it in. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, if I bring it over to this level that we had before, right, to get some real brightness in here, notice that you have a lot more data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring mine to 2.5 here. Right, let's bring it to 3 just so that we can kind of compare them apples to apples. Come over here, move this to 3. And then come over here. I'm going to move this to just straight 3. And now having those two selected, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of hit the letter C for comparing. So here's one, right? The original one. Here's this one. Right? So now that shows there's a lot more that you can go here, right? In terms of contrast, in terms of, pulling meat and information out without getting all of this here. So the file seems to have a lot more latitude when you're working with it here, not only in terms of, where you can go with it from an exposure standpoint, right? Obviously going up to 10 and minus 10 kind of gives you a lot of range, but there's a lot of meat in that individual file. So how would you work this file now? Well, the good part about this is that now you can go ahead and in ranges like this, right, in areas where you miss all of this detail, maybe I can go in here and I can go ahead and grab a brush and come into this one section, and now you can expose and bring a lot of that detail back into this area. Right, so there's one. Right, I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to make it smaller. I don't want to paint too much into this. And so I'll go inside of there. Then I'll grab my exposure, bring the exposure down, bring the exposure down. Come back over here, do the same thing. Right, so I can go into these areas and really kind of paint in any kind of detail that I want. Now, overall, I also have the chance to kind of just make some big global corrections, right? I can go ahead and take this, bring this down, and let's just say that I don't necessarily want to worry about these glasses just yet, but let's say that I really just kind of want to open up this part right here. Well, bring it in here, and then I can go ahead and just kind of see that there's a lot more information in this area. Bring this gradient up, and now from here I can even add a little bit of clarity if I'm looking for some more detail into this, right? This kind of brings you into HDR categories, right? So technically you could just kind of bring this down, bring this up, and then start bringing up highlight information. Oh, here, take a look at this. This is cool, right? So let's just say we go back to a regular exposure, right? So there's our highlights blown out. I can go ahead and just, I don't even have to brush in a lot of those effects. See, automatically brings all of that highlight detail right back into it. So that's why I didn't want to necessarily focus on brush, 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 brush. Just highlight, bring it in. Take my shadows, bring them up. Lots of information. Now I can grab my vignette to add a little bit of darkening into the corners. We'll feather it out. You're going to find that you're probably going to need a little bit more vignette than you're normally used to. Now from at this point, you can go ahead and bring in a little bit of clarity, and I would just kind of sock in a little bit of detail in here. And now you can grab some of this stuff and you can actually make sure that you get a lot more meat and a lot more detail out of this image. So this is pretty much what they're talking about when they're talking about working with these 32-bit HDR files inside of Lightroom. Now you have these files that have this incredible amount of range for you to do stuff with them, and really will take your images and kind of move them up when you aggregate them into the HDR space. Now, if you want to see more information about me, where could you go? You could just come over here. Obviously, you can go to Kelby Training and pick up some stuff there. I have a website at aboutrc.com, and as always, you can follow me at Google Plus by just going to g+rc.com.